Hey guys, welcome back to another weekly episode of the Scrubbed-in podcast. So today's topic, we're going to talk and basically tell you how to get first centile or first rank in any exam. And I'm only saying that with confidence because I'm with Amz and he's proven track record of getting a first in his BSc, a first throughout med school, year in, year out. So let's get straight into it. What do you want to start with?
Let's start off with talking about what's the most common things that people do to actually revise.
Fine.
Yeah. What do you think they are?
So I'll start with what I did because
Yep,
that's
fine.
probably the most common one. It's textbook, reading what you need to learn again and again and again. I think it's called rote learning. So
Okay.
reading the same thing over and over and over again,
Yep.
but to memorize.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take a step further, which you probably see a lot of medical students, or a lot of students in general do, is they read it, but they're at this level of highlighting, using loads of marker pens and highlighting the key pieces of information on that textbook or lecture notes. And I think that's probably the most common way of doing it.
Yeah. And then one more.
Is there another one?
Do you know the last one?
I'm not too sure the last one.
So the third most common one is we see it a lot. So
Yeah.
you get this many notes handed out to you per term,
Yep.
and then someone else and the students go along, and then they make this much more notes. So they try
I
to
see.
summarize and they create their own.
So the
notes.
people create their own notes. Yeah. Did you
Okay.
do that?
I did that when I first started, and I realized the downside, which is you waste so much time, effort, and it yields almost nothing.
Fine.
Yeah.
All right.
So those three methods that you said. So the first thing first, they work,
Yep.
but they are proven, not proven. I would say there's loads of research to actually show that it's not the most efficient way. So if you guys want to search up any studies or anything, Professor Dunlosky did a study on all of this, okay? So what he showed is that those three methods, okay?
Yeah.
Rereading, highlighting. Do you remember that mate of ours who used to highlight the whole book? The whole book was green.
Yeah.
The whole book.
So there was more text that were uncolored and white, essentially the page numbers and the title, and everything. All you see was chunks of green and yellow.
You tell me how that helps.
And you know who you are.
Yeah, you know who you are.
Yeah.
You watch that stuff. Okay? Highlighting, and then the last one is summarizing. All three of those methods have been shown to be sort of not as efficient as what people think it could be. Okay? So that's the first thing, just to sort of lay out there. The thing is, there's a way to use those three methods, because we find that most of us, we're actually comfortable to do it, but there's a way to do it that makes it efficient. Okay?
Fine.
So the two things that have been recommended, and loads of other YouTubers, loads of other people have also talked about this concept, and it's the concept of active retrieval, active recall, and spaced repetition. Remember those two buzzwords. Just Google them and you'll find out loads of information about that. Did you ever practice any of that?
I did. So active recall retrieval. So when we studied, I don't think we were consciously aware of we were doing it. Well, we probably did a certain bit of it. So I don't think I was consciously doing it, but I did do spaced repetition.
Okay.
So let's say there was a lecture on human anatomy, the human body, right? I'll do it one day, and then I'll give myself a few days, and then I'll come back and do it, and then I'll come back and do it a few days after, because I know naturally whatever I read for the first time is never going to be enough. Even reading that second time round may not be enough. I would need to come back to it again and again, but not back to back. I would need to let some time elapse in between.
Yeah. So that's exactly what it is. So spaced repetition works on a way where you give yourself time to forget, and then you quickly relearn it and sort of stock it up in your brain, and then you give yourself time to forget and you do it again. Okay, so basically there's another graph that shows if you imagine an exponentially sort of downward curve of forgetting information, right? If you let yourself time to forget and then you redo it, that curve basically shifts and becomes more shallower. So you start to forget less and less information. And so that's why when you make a schedule, you don't just revise topic 1 and then never again. No, do topic 1 and then do topic 2 on possibly if it's 1 week, Monday, do it on Wednesday, let yourself forget, do it on Friday, and then do it on Sunday. That consolidation is really strong. Okay, that's what I used to do, by the way. I used to do a topic, used to let myself forget, do it again, give my less time to forget, do it again, consolidates it. Okay, so that's essentially spaced repetition. Okay, active recall, like you said, you probably did it, and you did do it. So it's the use of exam questions. And I remember we had a WhatsApp group, and we were asking questions. Do you remember? How did that make you feel, by the way? Asking questions.
To
on a
be fair,
WhatsApp group.
I wouldn't say enjoy is the right word. I found it kind of beneficial because you can be, doing whatever you're doing, and then someone might put a question up and say, okay, something about the heart, and they'll give you all the different options. And sometimes you learn things that maybe you haven't learned, or it's just on the go knowledge.
Or that you forgot, right?
Or you forgot.
Spaced repetition.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
So I remember something about it. I can't remember it. They'll be like, the answer is B. So I was happy with it. There was loads of WhatsApp groups. What did you think of it?
I personally didn't like it, but that was because I had so when it came to myself, we'll go through sort of 8 steps on how to sort of smash your exams. But one thing I did in those 8 that I'll summarize later is that I used to have a schedule. And if I found that people were throwing information that I was going to cover a lot later, it made me anxious.
Fine.
So I just left the groups.
So anything...
couldn't really handle that.
So I think that kind of highlights 2 different types of people. So whereas for me, gaining information from any source from wherever was beneficial, it's better than having no information. Whereas for you, because you had a certain way of learning and you had a certain structure, anything that kind of disrupted that made you feel more anxious. And I can kind of get that. It's like, crap, I haven't studied this. These have studied it.
Exactly.
I don't know anything about it. So that I can imagine give you anxiety. So I think identify yourself.
Exactly. You need to know whether it helps you or not. For me, it didn't help. It disrupted my mindset.
Yeah.
It made me anxious. I was thinking, okay, when am I going to revise that? Oh, that's important.
That's why there's loads of groups, especially with finals, and you only see Amz Choudhury has left the group. Amz Choudhury has left the group. And I remember once I was like, why is Amz leaving? And obviously Amz, luckily was, he was known to be one of the smartest in the year. So it was bare odd. And then he's like, look, it's not the way I learn. And then I think people were like, a lot of people are stuck in that group for the sake of it. But I think you started and people are leaving. So I think don't subject yourself to something that gives you anxiety. And don't compare yourself to other people, because he may cover a topic that you plan to cover.
That's what,
and you probably think, oh, we all revise in the same way, we all have the same schedule, and you'll be like, wow, I'm 2 topics behind. So there's no need to give you anxiety, especially in a degree like medicine where the content is so heavy. Fine, let's move on.
Yeah, so just to finish now on what active recall is. Active recall is essentially going back into your brain to bring out that piece of information. Okay, so it's not reading, it's not having the information out in front of you. Is you going in to get that out. How do you go in to get that out? People use flashcards. People use WhatsApp where they ask you, okay, so tell me the risk. For example, in the last video you said, what are the risk factors for morning sickness? Those things. When you ask a question, you have to go in to go get it out.
So we used to do that a lot. I remember on campus we'd be like, yo, Amz, what's this? What's that? Or so my schedule was very similar to yours. So let's say we started hematology, blood disorders, and we're like, Amz, what causes sickle cell? Or what's the incidence rate? So we used to test each other, and we used to argue lots. And I think that was quite good.
It was good because we used to discuss it.
We used to discuss and debate. So in essence, anything which allows you to kind of go back into your brain and gather that information when it's not there in front of you in a textbook is active recall or active retrieval. And in terms of practical strategies or practical ways of doing that, it's flashcards, exam papers, question banks online, kind of making, again, what I did was a piece of A4 sheets of paper and writing everything I knew about sickle cell off by heart, and me trying to retrieve as much information as I can, and then knowing I've missed 1 or 2 things and going back to lecture, so like, okay, fine, I got X, Y, and Z right, I missed out this, and then doing it. So anything which puts you under a certain degree of strain or pressure to get that information essentially strengthens that connections we mentioned before.
Connections, fine. Fine. So we've gone through that. So now let's give you together. We came up with an 8-step formula, and if you stick to it, I think you will be getting distinctions. You will be getting the first centile position. That's how it is. I think these 8 steps will secure that place, and that's in any exam, be it medicine or whatever it is. Okay. So number one is you have to know what you should know and know what you don't know and what you need to know. Okay, all of those things. Okay, you need to know your syllabus. What does year 1 of medicine test you on? What should you know at that stage? For example, in year 1 of medicine, you're not expected to know the management of cellulitis that we should know in year 5, for example.
True.
But you're expected to know the basic science of how Staph aureus causes the infection.
Fine.
Do you get it? You need to know at that basic science level. you need to first work that out, because otherwise you're not learning the right thing. Remember our mate that revised, was doing a BSc and found out that he was revising the complete wrong module.
Yeah. So I think the learning from that is every university, every degree, every course will always have a list of learning objectives for the year. They may break it down into lectures, they may break it down into modules, they may break it down into subcategories. So a good way is to get a list of learning objectives as your syllabus. So you have to be a bit proactive and be like, okay, fine, in terms of blood disorders or in terms of the heart, I need to know how many chambers does the heart have, all the 3 most common heart disease, 3 most common medications, and that is your guide in terms of syllabus. So you may be in a lecture trying to memorize every last bit of it, but when you look at the learning objectives, you're not really expected to know the pressures of, a certain blood vessel in the foot. So be smart, especially in medicine, because the content is so diverse and so wide. You don't have the luxury of learning everything in details. So know what is expected to learn your syllabus. And I'll say, after identifying what you need to know, identify what you don't know. So
definitely.
Identify, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to learn A, B, C, and D. Now the next step is, okay, now I know what I need to know. What is it that I don't know? And start with that. And in essence, that is now gearing you up to creating a timetable. So kind of saying, the way we did it was, okay, we did it by days. So let's say, okay, our finals is in 27 days. We have 27 topics. That's a topic a day. Fine, let's do topic A in the morning. Let's do topic B in the afternoon. So we kind of used to break it down, how much we need to cover, how long do we have. So if we do you know what, I want to revise each topic at least twice or 3 times, that means I need to cover the topics within 1 week or 2 weeks, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Any advice in terms of other things you need to be involved in terms of a timetable?
So timetabling is important. People will say, oh, don't timetable, you can't do it with this much structure. That no, you need to know where your goal is. Otherwise, you're running a race that you don't know where it ends. Okay, and you don't know if you've prepared appropriately when you need to reach that goal. So what you need to do, right, is first make that list of what you need to know, right, and you need to start just slotting it in. Okay, but you need to slot it in a way that it's spaced out correctly. So, for example, you can't learn all of hematology in day 1, and day 27 comes and you've not done any hematology in between. So you keep it going. So what I used to do is 5 topics. Say there's 5 topics, right? Topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, topic 4, topic 5, right? But each day I'd be covering the previous day's exam bank as well. So if I learn cardiology on Monday and I do hematology on Tuesday I'll be still doing cardiology questions.
Fine.
Because it's part of the active recall, allowing me to go back into my cardiology knowledge. Okay? And this is important. And this is why people, I think, say don't do a timetable. Life exists, okay? So sometimes you simply can't revise, or sometimes you have to go out, or sometimes you have to do something, it gets in the way. And what can happen? It can completely derail, right? But what I do is I call it a buffer period, okay? You need to have leeway in each of the subjects. Don't cram all the subjects so you cover 5 subjects 15 times.
Yeah.
No, covering it 3 times is better than covering it 15 times if you do it the right way. Okay, so there needs to be days, lax days. And in those sort of spaces and pockets of time, again, active recall. Go back into your question banks. Go write it out from heart. All of those things. Strengthen the nerves. So yeah, that's on timetabling. Yeah.
Fine. And like Amz mentioned, the 4th point on that would be the buffer system. Scheduling the buffers, scheduling the time for procrastination, scheduling and give yourself leeway. Just because you have 5 topics to cover in 5 days doesn't mean you do a topic a day. Do it in such a way you have a buffer period. You know, things can crop up anytime, so give yourself room. I think a lot of problems start with, especially with medics, is we're too harsh and too rigid. We're like, do you know what? I can't breathe, I can't drink unless I've done something. I have to lock myself up in a room until I cover X, Y, and Z. The buffer period is your fail-safe. It allows you to have basically do high-quality revision. At the end of the day, it's high-quality revision that gets you the first centile and allows you to rank first.
And then the next one, I think we actually covered earlier on in the video, but we said what I did and what you guys should all be doing is incorporate those active recall methods. So we covered it. Flashcards, exam questions, WhatsApp question others. Discuss and debate. So for the SJT exam, me and you debated a lot. Asked, why did you think that? Why do you think? And then we remember those conversations. And then one thing. So some people will say, I like making notes. Okay. One thing I used to do was, I didn't make notes for the sake of me actually going through the notes, but I did something called what I do is active. It's active recall, but it's also active learning. So it's not passive and just reading. So I used to read, right, like you said, and then I used to again get an A4, and I used to just write it out by heart. It was ineligible. I couldn't read what I wrote, but what it was doing was sort of using my motor sort of nerves and everything to write out every single thing I learned, every single thing that and if it didn't match the book when I looked at it, then I'm doing it again.
Fine.
And I did it again and again until I had, this is something I carried over from A-levels, by the way. I had the AQA book memorized.
So what's interesting about that is they've shown the more modes or modalities of learning you use, the stronger the learning and revision is.
Exactly.
So essentially, reading is not as good quality as reading and writing. And then if you can associate with a smell, or if you can associate with a certain color, I remember we revised so hard to a point where like I knew certain pages and what color certain things were highlighted, because not only did I read it and memorize and understand, not only did I write it, I associated color with it. So the more things you can associate with something, the stronger that memory and active recall is. It's why, you know, when people do card tricks and they can remember a 52 deck in any order, it's because with each card they associate a story or they associate something with it to reinforce it, and they just play out that story. Exactly. So visually, hearing, smell, sense of smell, you know, if you need a calm, cool room, combine it, and that will strengthen your revision rather than just reading off a book again and again and again.
And this is where I'm going to actually go back and say, you know, those three methods we said that wasn't so efficient: rereading, highlighting, summarizing, and making notes. Remember, we're not saying that it doesn't work. And like you said, bringing all those all the senses together to do it. Actually, so I used to reread. I used to highlight keywords. I used to write it all out from heart. The thing is, if you bring those three inefficient methods, let's call it, combine it with some active read, what happens in exam questions, I could visually, like you said, we could see that paper, you could see the lecture in the corner, bottom left corner, exactly. There was a statistic there. That's the answer. That's how it eventually plays out. So that's number 5. Number 6 we talked about. It was something that I used to do is with the spaced repetition. What you need to do is, if you do 2 topics a day, right, make sure you've allocated time where all you're doing is just going into your brain. So I used to do, I remember in the morning it'd be read, revise, read it, write it all out by heart, do some exam questions in a break, and then go into the next topic. And in the evening, it would purely be exam question after exam question after exam question after exam question. And that was it. So that's it. And it would be covering previous topics that I didn't cover that day, but topics that I covered a week ago. You make sure you go into your brain.
I think that's important. And the other thing is, I've never been a big fan of the cramming method, but I understand for some people it works and sometimes it is necessary. But especially with certain active recalls, I know there's this concept of, I'm going to learn everything, I'm going to learn it really well, and then I'm going to do the 100 questions on the exam questions or the 100. I personally disagree with that. I think you should consistently always be doing exam questions or consistently be testing yourself with it. The best way to kind of active recall is past questions on the exam bank. You know, there's past tests, past, but there's loads of them. Do it consistently, a few every day, rather than leave it for 2 months later and have 1,000. Remember, in past, you can collect all the questions, there's 1,000 questions. No, do it such a way that you do it consistently, and it means you can do it at least 2 or 3 times rather than saving it till the end, because it's better. You identify what you haven't learned, and then you can focus on learning that. You're like, okay, do you know what? In terms of heart, I know X, Y, and Z. I don't know about this. Let me spend time on it. So consistently do questions after questions rather than doing all of them at the end of the month or at the end of it.
100%. Because again, that's reinforcing. It's causing you to go back into that knowledge consistently. So yeah, and now the last rule. So this is my rule. Okay, so this is my rule, my formula that worked. Okay, this was how I revised everything, BSc, whether it was for even video editing, what have you. Okay, I spend the first time that I look at a topic, okay, I just sit there and it might take me 4 hours, it might take me 5. I understand the topic. I understand all the background, why the theory is the theory, why it is what it is, okay? And you people need to, I think I would recommend that you forget about the time pressure of, I need to get through this in 2 hours. No. Spend as much as you need to understand why this condition is like this, why the etiology is like this, what have you, okay? That's number one. Number two, what I do is then all about sort of, not just understanding, now memorizing, committing that to heart and going into my memory to recall that. So if it was for my BSc papers, I'd read the papers and then I'd actively recall, this paper has this statement in it. This was done by John et al. In 2013. Write it out again and again and again and again and again, right? Going into it, tests, create flashcards, okay? So that was number two. And number three, okay? So this cycle was to actually relearn everything one more time. Go back to the topic, read through the definition, the etiology, prognosis, management, treatment, investigation, everything again. But you race through it. What my personal concept was, I need my eyes to just see that book, that paper, that lecture notes one more time. Okay? Race through it. And then what I did was, exam questions. That was it. So all I did was just actively recall whatever I've got. I used to always say, right, I had this conversation with someone once and they said to me in the WhatsApp group, man, I can't remember this. These guys are having a conversation about this hematological malignancy and I did revise it. I revised it 2 weeks ago. I don't know it. And I said this phrase, I remember, and I say this to everyone as well. The knowledge is there if you've done it. It's just in the part of your brain that you probably can't retrieve from it right now. But if you keep testing yourself, ask yourself that question, go back and find that answer, and then come out of there. And then go again later on. You find that it is there. That knowledge is there. It's just, can you access it? That's it. So it is there, but can you access it? And you need to sort of build the doors of access. That's
essentially. I agree.
That's the 8-step formula for me, man. That landed me loads of scores.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to wrap it up. I can't add anything. I think I agree with it wholeheartedly. We want to keep this video short and sweet, and we hope you find it super beneficial. Sit through it, find techniques that work for you, and remember, at the end of the day, it's techniques that work, high quality, high grade revision. Once you learn something, it is there in your brain. You, just like Amz mentioned, need to find how to access it. And all these techniques, flashcards, active recall, past questions, exam banks, is what helps you get it and strengthen it. So all the best with all your upcoming exams, and we hope to see you next week.